No.
Welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast.
Hello and welcome to the My Haunt Life podcast. I'm Russell.
I'm Mike.
And first, I think we should probably introduce ourselves and tell you who we are. My name is Russell. I am a haunt nerd. I'm a horror fan, and that's a major part of my life. You'll find out that as we go into our discussions, I do a large number of haunts and immersive theater events throughout the year, and this podcast is going to be covering some of that territory. By day, my day job is an editor, and that's my career, and I do enjoy it and do love it, but my passion lies with the horror genre.
And your passion lies with the horror genre, but your day job is an editor. But what do you edit, Russell?
Of course you had to bring that up. I mainly edit children's programs, cartoons for children. That is my bread and butter. Even though I'm a horror fan and I love the horror genre and I love things gory and gooey, I cut children's cartoons.
There you have it, parents. No background checks are done on the people editing your cartoons because you have this guy editing them.
Yes, my office mates never miss an opportunity to kid me about all the extreme stuff I do on my weekends in the horror genre as a hobby and as a passion, and then I come to work every Monday morning to edit children's material.
And my name's Mike, and like Russell, I'm a haunt nerd. Luckily, we live in the Los Angeles area where there is a plethora of spooky events going on all year round. Not just around Halloween, not just in the fall, but all year. There's always something going on, whether it be escape rooms, immersive theater, or horror theater. Places like Zombie Joe's have things all year round, and haunts like Heretic have events almost monthly, I think, at this point. It turns out we go to quite a lot of the same events, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to start a podcast as well as a website. You can check the website out at myhauntlife.com. You can read some of our reviews there. What we notice is when we talk about the haunts we go through, or the theater we go to, or the escape rooms we go to, afterwards we spend hours on the phone or in person talking about what we just went through, comparing notes, comparing experiences, doing all of that. And it clicked in my mind. When my roommate was around last time we had a conversation. We had a conversation about the last Heretic show, which is called Rituals, which we'll get into in a second. But we were talking about it, and after Russell left, I asked her, is any of this interesting to you, or do we just sound like a bunch of nerds just talking about a haunted house? And she loved it. She loved listening to us because it's not something that she really gets exposed to. She gets scared at the sight of a spider, so haunted houses and her really don't mix. So to be able to kind of experience something through someone else's words, she found really fascinating. And that's what we're hoping to do with this podcast, is giving listeners that really don't or can't experience the things we experience a chance to live them somewhat. Because on the website our reviews are just words. Words can only go so far. Hearing us talk about things we go through, it's easier and a lot of times funnier. So we hope you enjoy it.
And technically, I would like to add that I also get scared by spiders. One of the things that I do as a way to express creatively the passion is for the haunt genre, the events. I actually work with a company called Evil Twin Studios, and we're constructing a haunt now for this haunt season. It's going to be called Evil Twin Studios Ward 13. It's an asylum-based haunt. It comes up in our conversations, as Mike said, we talk about different things that we go through and different things that we're working on, or things that inspire us. I think as you listen to our conversations, you'll find that we are very passionate about this sort of, I usually use the word play, because that's what it is for me. It's emotional play, it's psychological play. It's just a good time to explore being scared and scaring other people sometimes. it's funny to listen to him talk about his roommate as someone who isn't that interested and yet enjoys hearing about it. And I think that is a common thing. I know certain people would never do some of the events that Mike and I choose to do because they think it would be too scary or too intense for them.
It's just one of those things. We go through it, and not a lot of people want to go through. They don't want to be manhandled. They don't want to be taken somewhere from where they were supposed to meet, which is something that happens quite a lot now, and it's awesome.
I just find that interesting that certain people have certain limits and certain levels of intensity that they can tolerate. One thing about Mike and I doing the same event, sometimes at different times on different nights even, we don't get the same experience and we don't look at it the same way. We walk away with different impressions of what the show was about, what the content was about, what they were trying to do or communicate in the show. So we have very different perspectives. We approach this from very different attitudes and likes and dislikes. We don't have the same level of intensity that we enjoy sometimes.
Right.
But that's also part of the reason that we like talking about this stuff, and we talk about it a lot with our friends who do some of the same events.
And kind of going back on what you just said, a lot of people don't want to handle the intensity of some of the things we go through. Russell and I go through a lot of extreme haunts, and you might recognize Russell because he's a extreme haunt superstar. He was on the Scare LA panel for extreme haunts, the extreme haunt survivor panel. But a lot of people, they do like hearing about it, but they would rather go to one haunted house where it's a straight path. It may be a twisty path, it may be a maze, but from beginning to end, it's a straight path. To me, that's boring, and that's why I got more into extreme haunts, because I hated going through places like big theme parks because there's no line control, in my opinion, at least. You're conga lining through, and you see the scare 5 feet in front of you. And plus, I'm male, I'm older, I have tattoos. I'm not their demographic. They're not trying to scare me. They're going for the 12-year-old girl that screams at everything, and for me, I just feel like I waste my money. I'd rather spend that money on what I guess I call them indie type haunts, where they are doing something different. They are letting you go through alone. They're not forcing you to go through with 50 other people and things like that. And I like it a little rough. So there's that too.
That's an interesting point because it's something I've noticed too. When I go through one of the big theme park haunts or mazes at one of those events, I am an easy get. Jump scares work for me. I am one of those people that even if I think or suspect a jump scare is coming my way, I will scream, jerk back. I will react. I'm just an easy get. Some people aren't. I am. When I get targeted inside those haunts, that's the reason why, is because they realize that I am an easy get. But Mike is correct. Sometimes they look at me as, I'm older and I have graying hair, and they just look at me and go, wow, don't know if I should scare him or don't know if he would like to be scared.
Does our insurance cover heart attacks?
All right. So, but it was a legitimate, I don't want to say gripe. It's a legitimate observation, I guess, on our part that as solo guys going through, or as being in a group of guys, sometimes that does happen where you just don't feel like the cast makes the effort.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is strictly my opinion, but I feel like a lot of people in those places, they're just there for a paycheck. They don't. This is going to sound lame, but they don't live the haunt lifestyle. They don't live to scare people. Of course, there are people within there. I'm not saying everybody is, but I think a lot of those people are just like, just give me my paycheck, boo. Ooh, I'm a ghost. Ooh. That's the impression I got, and that's why I stopped going to some of those bigger theme park haunts.
I actually have a slightly different take on that because I know numerous actors and performers who work at the haunts, and I think Mike is correct in saying some of the people do see it as a way to collect a paycheck. Many, many years ago, I actually worked a season at Universal during their event, and I ran into all levels of people who were creative and trying their best to come up with the best and the most unique scares. And I also ran into the people like Mike was referring to. I know numerous people who perform for Universal and at Knott's and Queen Mary and some of the bigger events. And most of my friends that I associate with are very passionate about it, but I know that what he's talking about is a real concern, is a real factor, I should say, in those jobs.
Which is a bum out. But, it is what it is. we said how much we like going through these extreme haunts. Last week, Russell and I went through an event called Rituals. This is under the Heretic umbrella. If you don't know who Heretic is, it's a Los Angeles-based company, and they've been doing stuff for the last, since 2013, I think.
I believe
right?
so. I believe late 2013.
And it's very, I hate to sound snobby, but it's very exclusive. You kind of have to know about it and know people working within it to be able to get a ticket. They're very hard to come by, but it's awesome. This past event, Rituals, was fantastic. I loved it.
And it was also one of the few events recently that they've done that they actually did. It was a very small number of patrons who went through, partially because of the ambition of the show didn't allow them to put large groups through. But it was a show where they actually went online and sold tickets to the event, which is, I think they'll probably be heading toward that more in the future, I hope, because I really hope more people discover them and have the chance to experience their shows.
Right. And I would say maybe in the past, since 2013, this might have only been the second show that they actually sold tickets to.
I believe so.
Out of all of the shows they've done, which I want to say maybe
I don't know.
12 to 15 maybe total, it's a blur at this point. Only 2 of those shows you were really able to buy tickets. Luckily, we were able to snag tickets.
There was a continuous story arc that started with the first Heretic show.
Heretic is a series of haunts. Rituals was the 6th and final installment in the Heretic series.
And there are certain themes and characters that linked each of the shows. The shows were sometimes very different in tone and content, but there was an overall theme linking the shows together. And Rituals was, as Mike said, part 6, and it was sort of the culmination of the storyline where you actually met, we'll get into in a second, but near the end of the show you actually entered an area which was controlled by a cult, supposedly, and that cult, there were characters in that cult that had affected earlier shows that you may or may not have attended.
The build-up and lead-up to Rituals was fantastic. We would get random emails with random images and random instructions, such as you're a part of a documentary film crew and you're going to infiltrate the woods where this cult lives and document what they're doing and their rituals, hence the name. And it just the build-up and everything that you got, it just adds to the story. And that's one of the things that I think Heretic is great at, is making a story about the haunt. No matter what haunt they do, there's always a story build up to it. It's not like we have a haunted house and it's a zombie theme. If Heretic did this, it would be there was a virus that got released by this doctor, and there would be a whole story going along with it. And that's one of the things I love. And that's one of the big differences after Russell and I were talking about this, that I felt I loved the story. Because there was a couple points that you said, I thought this part was pointless pretty much. And I totally disagree, because in my mind, I had the story in the back of my head. But for Russell, it was something totally different. So
yeah, actually what Mike is referring to is there was a scene of violence and sexuality which it felt pointless as I was going through the show, because the story for me at that point, the story that we were actually living as we were going through this show, felt very muddled and confused. And so to walk into a scene that contained a high level of violence and sexuality, in my head I actually went, wow, is this just shock value? Like, are they just trying to offend me or disgust me or titillate me? And it actually took me out of the show because the story was so confused. We'll discuss a few points about the show. I don't think either of us want to reveal too much about this show, particularly because in future events some of these elements may return. Right,
and he's doing a Rituals 2, which apparently tickets go on sale October 1st, and it's going to be a double show. It's going to be Rituals 2 and a show called Hex. I'm not really sure what Hex is about, and I'm not really sure what Rituals 2 will be, but I think it should follow the same storyline, just in a different location and different scenes, or edited scenes, deleted scenes from the first one. If any of this sounds interesting to you, you should check out the Heretic website. I believe it's heretichorrorhouse.com, and just follow them and sign up for their newsletter, and you can grab tickets for this. Who knows, if if the next show after this will have tickets available. So
Be forewarned, this is extreme haunt territory. There is a level of physicality usually to their shows that would make some people uncomfortable. Your average haunt goer may be very uncomfortable with the content and the physicality of their shows.
right, it is very, very aggressive. You will be touched, you will be moved, you will be grabbed. You will get wet, you will get sticky, and those really aren't spoilers because that pretty much happens in every Heretic show. But you have to realize that if you're the type of person that has that kind of reflex where if someone gets close or grabs you, you square away ready to punch someone, you probably shouldn't go do this, because you will be wanting to punch everybody if that's your reaction. What you really have to do is, and Russell always talks about this when we talk about things, but you really have to role play within this. You have to role play what the story is. So for the story, we were the documentary film crew, so we had to play the part of the documentary film crew. We were no longer Mike and Russell, we were filmmaker 1 and filmmaker 2, and if you do it that way, you have a better chance of making it out.
Now, actually getting to the show itself, Mike and I both have experience doing many different types of shows. This format, which Rituals took, of being some bizarre love child of theater, haunts, role-play scene, it absolutely was at times thrilling, and it was incredibly ambitious. The creator's name is a gentleman named Adrian Marcato. His cast, his crew, they strived for something completely unique. Their ambition at time created scenes that were absolutely marvelous. There were a couple of extremely scary moments, and there were a couple of moments that I, for lack of a better term, found almost beautiful. There was one transition in particular that Mike and I have discussed that literally you transitioned from one location to another, and you entered a building, and you entered this beautiful fog-filled, dimly lit area.
It was almost like a dream.
Absolutely, that is the best description for it. You entered this, and immediately the pace of the show, the pace of the characters you were encountering, their intensity was drastically different from everything else that you had encountered, and then it began to escalate into a more intense place than you had ever encountered before. So it was this weird, enchanting moment where you walked in, and then you almost felt like an intruder because every character in the room turned and in some way dealt with you.
Here's a funny anecdote. I don't think I told you this yet. I actually was an intruder at one point. Where the room that Russell's describing takes place, it's on the second floor of, I'm assuming it was someone's home, and on the ground floor, I don't know if that was someone else's home or the owner's home or whatever. Either way, I confused the instructions that I was given, and I ended up walking into the bottom floor, and the person that lived there or worked there or whatever was there and just asked me if he could help me. And it was inside. I was like 3 feet inside his house, and by mistake. And then the person working the haunt came in and was like, no, not here. And then I overheard a conversation with them saying, should I keep my door closed? What's going on? And mind you, the person talking to that person is in a ski mask, and it has a video camera, so you can imagine what that guy was probably thinking, assuming he got a heads up. But if he didn't, still, I mean, it was just funny.
No, I hadn't heard that story before. That's actually very humorous. So how do you want to go back and discuss the beginning of Heretic?
Yeah, and it's really tough. I think we're coming up to our first hurdle of problem of talking about these haunts is we can't give spoilers, and that's the best part of the haunt, is like talking about it. It's like, oh, in this scene this happened, in this scene that happened, but we'll try to do our best and get you excited and listening to it. And maybe after haunt season, if we can go back and talk to him, and can we talk about the haunt and give spoilers of what happened, and maybe, hopefully, I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, at the beginning of the haunt, I mean, even that's really a spoiler.
I think we can skirt around it a little bit by saying this. We've already given you, if you're listening still, we've already given you the basic outline of the plot. So the whole beginning of the story was actually meeting the film crew that we were supposed to be working with. And in one of the earlier emails, it was kind of hinted that you would be investigating this cult, but it was also hinted that the documentary film crew that you were about to join weren't exactly the nicest people in the world. And almost immediately once we entered the show, we were being, let's just say, I use the word hazed, I guess, to become a member of this team, to become a member of this crew. And so there was a sequence where there was some...
There's some initiation going on.
Yeah, there was. Some of it was very physical, and some of it was very painful. As a matter of fact, I'm how long ago was the show?
It was a week
ago.
2 days.
And I'm still walking around. I have one particularly nasty bruise that I'm still walking around with that much later. And again, I don't think they crossed a limit with me personally, but it's not for everyone. Following that initiation, we actually became part of the film crew, where some of us had to move equipment, some of us had to deal with other film crew members, and some of us were just basically told to wait until we were given a task. And those of us, I found myself in that position. I was messed with several times. One of the film crew members took a particularly somewhat disturbing, and I don't mean that in a negative way, disturbing liking to me and was physically very affectionate toward me.
I know who you're talking about.
Which again, some people would be very uncomfortable with that. I thought it was very interesting. Now, sometimes one of the reasons that Mike and I talk about these shows afterwards is even in that sequence, Mike and I were treated very, very differently. I dealt with, at times, I don't think this is a huge spoiler, I was physically roughed up a little bit in a way that included some pressure point stuff where they caused some physical pain by hitting certain nerves at various places on my body. And Mike said that he didn't receive much of that. And also, at one point, my hands were tied during the show, which I have a few friends that would be an absolute no-no, that they would not be able to stand that. I actually found it very interesting because what it did is, physically, I was not off balance, but I had to pay very particular care as I was moving and being walked from place to place, which does happen in this show, about my balance, because literally my hands were tied and I wouldn't be able to grab anything if I stumbled and fell. And we were outdoors at different points, and we were dealing with different terrains and walking in and out of buildings.
And you got an extra room, right, also.
Actually, it wasn't an extra room. If you were taken into the film crew earlier, there was a room which you went through. Mike was the last person brought into the film crew, so he actually ended up bypassing this room. And it's not that it was a secret room or anything. It was just a character which Mike didn't get a chance to meet, but I did. And it was a setup to plant the seed that people in my position in the story had failed and bad things had happened. So it was a warning to follow the crew member's instructions, and if the crew member asked me to do something, I needed to succeed at it. I will say, however, that there was an Easter egg hidden in that room, which right before the show, I basically received a message that said, hey, there's an Easter egg, look for it. And I was lucky enough that I actually figured it out, and I found it, and my impression is that it might affect something in the future.
See, and that's another aspect of these indie haunts that I call them. There's personalization, and it's just awesome.
This is another aspect to some of the Heretic shows that he does personalize the shows from person to person sometimes.
This is an example I had. Last year, I went through a haunt called Alone, and at one scene, they called me by what my Instagram and Twitter are, which is DJ Living Dead. Follow me. And going through a dark hallway and having a girl come up to me and whisper in my ear, "Are you Mike? Are you DJ Living Dead?" It's crazy. It sounds like nothing, but when your heart is racing and you're in a dark hallway and you just went through a haunted house and a bunch of stuff happened to you, for someone in there to know your name and call you out, it messes with you. It messes with your head a lot. And that's what is great about these is the personalization.
Yeah, and actually, Alone is an event that Mike and I have been going to for a couple of years, and they do personalize. We've also been to other events. Blackout is known for personalization on some levels, depending on what show you're going through with them, whether it's a regular season or an off season. Heretic has certainly done it a couple of times. They're also they cater to your needs if you have an injury or something like that, so they're very aware of personalizing it that way on the safety side. But yeah, there's been a couple of times when I kind of get a wink, wink, nudge, nudge moment in a couple of these different shows when, oh yeah, that person knows my name, like Mike just said, or wait, I think that just referenced my real life. Which adds a certain level of creativity to this, and it makes you feel special. It makes you feel like they care and appreciate you coming to support them. Mm-hmm. Getting back to Heretic, what do we need to cover for Heretic? How do we encourage people without giving anything away?
Well, another thing I wanted to bring up was the time length. From the starting point when we were told to meet to the ending point when I got back to my car, it was about 2 hours. And that's 2 hours of going through one single event. Like, picture that. Picture going through whatever you really usually go through, whether it be a theme park or something else. It's a maze. A haunted maze is maybe 10, 15 minutes at most. This was 2 hours. I was going to say something, but I can't because it's a spoiler. But just one aspect of Heretic was 15 minutes. And you know, when you think about being in something that emotionally and physically draining for 2 hours, and just to be able to walk to your car afterwards is it just says a lot about you, you know. And I don't mean that as oh, they're beating your legs and it's hard to walk. I just mean emotionally. You're emotionally spent, and you just want to just sit down and relax and afterwards. And it's, as sick and twisted as this sounds, it's such a great feeling. You know, it's a great feeling to have something be able to do that to you at this point in your life, because not a lot of things can have that much effect on someone. And for me, it's the physicality of some of these haunts, and it's great.
The Heretic event for me, Mike and I went in 2 different groups. Mike went much earlier in the evening than I did. I was part of the last group of the evening. To be totally honest, I can't judge how long my show was. I think the actual show was at least 90 minutes. Afterwards, I met and talked to some of the crew members afterwards. I'm not sure if you had that experience or not.
Afterwards, we did. Adrian hung out with us for a little bit, and we took some pictures and just chit-chatted a little bit.
Yeah, basically we talked to the crew. Because it was the last group of the night, they obviously had to wrap the location fairly quickly. And there were multiple locations in this particular show, so they had a lot of logistics to work out. But yeah, the actual show, I'm sure, was at least 90 minutes or longer for me. And as I said, we were a group of 5. Sometimes Heretic shows I know have done one-on-one experiences where you go through alone. The Heretic show, I think to wrap up our conversation about it, is we recommended, I think what we were impressed most with was the ambition of this show.
Definitely.
As I said, I found the story a bit muddled and confusing, and this is a personal preference of mine. If there is a level of physical aggression, and there is a lot of what some people would actually call abusive behavior by a cast, I have to understand it story-wise, or it becomes pointless. And that is a limit for me. I do not want to be pointlessly humiliated or abused or roughed up, because there is no reason for me to endure it if it is not part of a story that I'm sort of role-playing along with. In this situation, I didn't feel that occurred. It has happened to me in other haunts, definitely. It's a situation that is a personal thing of mine. I just don't want to deal with pointless humiliation and abuse inside a show. I think it's the lowest common denominator. It is the cheapest thrill somebody can try to provide for a patron. It's an easy out. Because extreme haunts have become so popular in the last couple of years, I think some people are thinking, oh, well, if we throw a bag over their head and shove them around a little bit, we can call ourselves extreme. Well, if you do that, there's no point, unless it is tied to a coherent story. My one criticism of this particular story is the roughness of it sometimes got muddled because I didn't see the point in, if we're helping this film crew out, if that's the role that I'm playing, why are they being so harsh and abusive to me if I'm actually doing them a service? It doesn't make sense. And actually, I've run into that particular hiccup for me in a previous Heretic show. I sometimes have trouble like coming to terms with that. However, in this particular show, it did work fairly well for me, and I had a great experience going through this show. I felt safe. I know one of the people in my group had a bit of a minor safety issue at one point with one of the actresses. I had somebody, I don't think it was deliberate, but I got a very clumsy blow to the head during the show, which I immediately said, hey, just to let you know, this just happened. And the actor immediately adjusted, where I was physically, immediately adjusted me. So I have no issue with, because in extreme haunting, accidents can sometimes happen. I think Heretic did a very good job of handling that. So as far as the show goes, it was extremely ambitious. At times it was extremely beautiful. It was extremely thrilling. I highly commend Adrian Marcato and his cast and crew for creating such a unique, lengthy, ambitious project. It was a thrill to go through, and I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and you pretty much said everything I would want to say. And, once again, Adrian, congratulations to you and your crew. I mean, you pulled it off. And this was something, and Russell, you had mentioned that this was something months and months and months ago, maybe even last year, that when you spoke to him, he was so excited for rituals to happen because of all his ideas.
I had a personal conversation with Adrian Marcato months ago, and he basically said, I'm really looking forward to this one particular show. And at that point, he was getting to know me and getting to know what I like about immersive pieces. And he said to me, well, if that's what turns you on, if you like that sort of imagery and creepiness, this is the show that I think you'll like the most. And he was correct. Mm-hmm. He was pointing toward this show. There's a lot of thought that goes into the planning of a Heretic show, and I commend Adrian for all of the effort.
Yeah, you pulled it off, man. Good job.
Moving on
to something a little less extreme.
Go ahead, Mike. Lead the way.
So, as much as we love doing extreme haunts and haunted houses and all things spooky, we also love escape games. We love escape the room games. There's a ton in LA popping up overnight, it seems. So we were lucky enough to do the Detective Room, which is part of Escape Room LA. And it was great. If that name sounds familiar, you might recognize it because it was featured on Conan O'Brien. Him and his producer, Jordan, went through it, and it was a blast. And did you have a chance to watch the video after we did it? Because the video is so much better after you actually went through it and seeing all the puzzles like that they're stuck on and whatnot.
No, I saw it a couple of weeks ago before we actually committed to doing the room, and I have not gone back and watched it. It's something I would like to do, yes.
Cool. So we did the room, and this was one of my favorite rooms. Like, I love this one.
Really?
Yeah. Like, just everything about it. It's set in the 1940s. You're set in a detective's office, and we had his accountant in the room. And the accountant or secretary, sometimes there's a secretary, they're there to kind of help guide you when you get stuck, drop a little hint here and there. It was just fantastic. And going in, we were a little bit scared. They have a little orientation before we go in the room, and it was Russell and I and two of our other friends. And we've done, all four of us have done many escape rooms before, so it wasn't anything new. There were 5 other people in that room. There was a group of 3 and a group of 2. None of them had done an escape room before. So that was their very first exposure and experience. So knowing that going in, we were scared. We're like, oh, what if they just stand there? What if they don't really know what to do? What if they don't explore enough? And, all of those thoughts were going through our minds, but they did awesome. If any of those people are listening, like, you guys ruled. It was awesome. And even the staff commented on how well we all worked together. Like, the teamwork in that room was fantastic.
They posted an Instagram photo of us after we failed to escape, by the way. We're talking very positively about this experience, and we actually didn't solve all the puzzles in the room, I think, which speaks very well to the room and how entertaining it is. They actually commented on the Instagram photo of us that they posted on their feed about that the teamwork was well done.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know, I really like this one. I think it was just because there were different sorts of puzzles that you actually needed to think about. What I mean is, granted, in every escape room, you do have to think about the puzzles. But for this one, there was a puzzle where it was basically a Sudoku type word puzzle. That's something I have never experienced in an escape room before. There was Morse code that you had to decipher at one point.
Yeah, which was highly entertaining. And one of the people who had never done an escape room before discovered that particular clue, and I actually ended up working with him to solve it. But it was very funny in the fact that it took us a while to figure out how to communicate with each other, which is very key in these rooms. And the other thing that happened, I think, in this room is, it was very clear that everyone, this has happened to Mike and I in another room. It was very clear that different people's different strengths came into play. And Mike and our friend Jake, actually, the puzzle that he referred to was the one that took a large amount of time to solve.
Oh, yeah, him and I did that one together.
It was completely key to the success of the room. And their strength was that they were able to sit down and concentrate and do it, while the rest of us were looking for other stuff. I am a little bit more geared toward visual alphabet type ciphers, things like that. And there was one of those in the room that I, with one of the other team members, figured out fairly rapidly.
Wait. Fairly rapidly. Are we talking about the 8 times you asked me what this was a cipher for?
No, that was something else. That we did not figure out rapidly at all. But no, it's like I spoke up and said, "Hey, is anyone else good with crossword puzzles or alphabet ciphers or things like that?" And this woman said, "Wait a minute, I do stuff like that." And so literally, it was a matter of it involved a series of photographs with numbers attached. And so what I ended up doing is just doing a call and answer session with her, and within a few minutes we had the entire thing figured out. And actually at the end, the accountant character said, like, "Hey, wait, we have teams who never even get that." So I was very proud of that.
That's awesome.
Because the rest of it I didn't understand.
Yeah, and it's always tough when you go in big groups like this, because what Russell just talked about, I had no idea what that is. This is the first I'm hearing about it, actually. So that's kind of one of the bummers about doing an escape room with a lot of people, is you don't get to see everything that gets solved or how it gets solved. If you're into that. Some people just want to go and escape and they don't care how, but I like to know, like, oh, you got a key? How'd you get that? Where'd it come from? But there's really not time to ask everyone because we're trying to escape.
And I actually feel the same way as Mike does about that. I want to sort of know where things were hidden around the room, because that's part of the fun of these things.
Definitely.
And when there are several rooms in LA that take up to 12 people, and if you have 12 people in a room trying to solve these puzzles, there's a lot of overlap and sometimes confusion, because of the communication has to break down at some point with that many people working on separate puzzles or games or ciphers or clues. It's just kind of a natural part of the process.
And I think another reason I really liked this one was because even though the main goal was to escape, they made it seem like there were 3 objectives. You had to do everything in order to escape. So basically, what the 3 objectives were to find out who the jewel thief was, to find the jewels, and then get out of the room. Obviously, you needed to figure out who the thief was and find the jewels before you could get out. But the fact that they split it up like that, it made it seem like you were accomplishing a lot more. Because most other escape rooms are find a way to escape. That's it. There's one thing you need to do in this room. But knowing here, it's like, okay, we have some objectives. Okay, this one is done. We can now focus on finding the jewels. And I like that aspect of it a lot.
The fact that some of the puzzles in the room required the answers from other puzzles, so they were
Right.
all intermingled, which doesn't always happen in these rooms. You know that you had a task to finish. At one point, you needed a clothing size of someone, and then that clue was elsewhere in the room, so you were constantly communicating with the other participants of like, hey, wait a minute, wait, who needed the clothing size? We just found something that might be a clothing size over here, or there might be another clue over here which somebody else needs. I thoroughly enjoyed this room. I thoroughly had a good time, enjoyed it, and I think we had a great group of people. Even though we got thrown in with people we didn't know, the communication was strong. Mike and I experienced a room last year where there was 4 of us who played the game. We wound up in a room with about 6 other strangers. 2 of them sort of were interested, and then the rest of them literally stood in a corner and talked about hair appointments and grocery shopping.
That one was horrible.
So it was a very bizarre experience because you were locked in a room with people who didn't want to be locked in the room with you and weren't trying to help you get out. It was actually humorous by the end of it. But this experience was very positive. I really enjoyed the room. I liked the fact that it was a period piece, and everything in the room was period feeling. The clues were of the period, the everything, the wall decorations, there were photos on the walls, there were posters. All of those things were of the period. So everything made sense to be part of a period piece, and that was actually, for lack of a better word, charming.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I love this one. The company Escape Room LA, they have another room called the Cavern that's open right now that I really want to try. And they told us that they're opening 2 other rooms in the next couple months. One of them's the Alchemist, and I don't remember what the other one was.
I don't remember either.
Well, there's another one, and that one's top secret. If you want to get more info, you can go to their website. It's escaperoomla.com or Escape Room Law. Check them out, and check out the Conan O'Brien piece. Go to YouTube and search Conan O'Brien Escape Room. It's awesome. Conan O'Brien's awesome anyway, but Conan O'Brien trapped in an escape room is even awesomer.
And also, you'll get a feel for what the escape room is, just
Right.
the period feel.
And there's not really spoilers, because after seeing it, everything that we saw was a little bit different. They also went earlier in the run. I think on the board they had 300 and change teams go through, and when we went through, we were in the 800s. So that there was 500 teams in between now and then, and so if you think there's maybe like 10 to 20 a night, I don't know. It was a long time ago, is what I'm trying to say. So the escape room stuff really goes on weekly. There's always an escape room going on. But as far as haunts, haunt season is starting, and it's starting good. So if you're wondering what else is coming up, say in the following week or the next month, you can check out the My Haunt Life Haunt Calendar. It's a listing of a bunch of events in the Los Angeles and Orange County and even Vegas areas. And it gives you everything that's going on in the night. And there's even a haunt map, so you can plan your route. If you want to hit up 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 in the same night, you can go and say, oh, these are the ones that are close to each other. I can do all of these in the same night. So to get there, go to myhauntlife.com/calendar or myhauntlife.com/map, or just go to myhauntlife.com and then play around. Read some reviews, check out the news, and then check out the calendar and the map. You won't be sorry. It's fun, and you'll get to see Russell and Mike covered in blood and lots of other pictures like that. So this concludes our first podcast. Go easy on us. We're just still learning. Hope you enjoyed it. So for My Haunt Life, I'm Mike.
And I am Russell.
We will hopefully see you next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.